Ian, we got a Patreon, don't we?
We do. Patreon.com /CU podcast. You go. Might cost you a little money, but you get
Might cost you a little bit of money.
You get the free. You get the full video podcast. You get bonus bits. You get hangouts.
Bonus.
You get writings. I just posted one today. I'll go in a little bit more into the thing. 40th anniversary screening I saw yesterday, and you get to vote on these poll topics.
In second place, 48%. Wow, what a split. What existing IPs would make a great beat 'em up game? We can keep that. We're
going to keep that one because I could talk about that.
You can? I'm glad you can talk about it, Frank. Frank. I called you Frank. What I call you Frank for?
I have
never
no
had my
fucking
life.
clue. I have no idea.
Because Frank can talk about a lot of things. But first place, defending retro games that most people dislike. So when I think about this, I think about conversations I get into with people, arguments with Ian on Twitter, Legend of Zelda, the stuff that comes up, and people get heated at times. But that's not a most though. Like Legend of Zelda, most people like Legend of Zelda.
Sure.
Ian's just a weirdo who doesn't like it. But most people that dislike a game you like, why do you feel like talk about the experience of defending? Like what goes through your mind when you talk about, hey, I want to defend, I don't know, a Tom Sawyer on the NES?
I think the one that I'd actually use as an example is Deadly Towers, a game that I do not hate. I don't hate Deadly Towers. And Deadly Towers is a silly game. It's not an amazing game by any stretch of the imagination. And it's very weird because you're a knight and you're fighting slinkies and bouncing balls and, weird shit like that. And there are monsters and stuff in it, but like there's a lot of just like weird throwaway enemies too, but it's got great music. I like the feel of it. I don't think the gameplay is really all that bad, and it's an interesting game to play. But you find that people have these like very like knee-jerk reactions to certain games.
Well, Deadly Towers has a very specific reason why.
Yes, and I'm getting to it. Deadly Towers has a specific reason why, and it's because back in the late 90s, a popular writer, Sean Baby, did a series of articles on retro games and what the worst retro games were.
This one was the 20 worst NES games of all time.
Yes.
Everyone that was around then that was into stuff read this article.
Has read this article. And the what's the word I'm looking for? The opinions expressed in this article have kind of trickled down throughout the years to people who may not even be aware of this article. But much like AVGN is the beginning of like some people not like is the beginning of like certain games getting a bad rep. Sean Baby was the beginning of certain games getting a bad rep back then.
Like the AVGN Ninja Turtles video. If that never comes out, I don't think you have these people saying that was a terrible game.
Because it's not a terrible game. It's a hard game, but it's not a terrible game by any stretch of the imagination. And so he lambasted Deadly Towers. I think it was the #1 worst game.
Sean Baby, and I love Sean Baby. I have a podcast coming up with him. I did on his what's it called, real quick, the 1-900 Hot Dogs podcast. Anyway, so the top 5 was Gilligan's Island, which does not belong in the top 5. It's not the best game. It's not a horrible game. Tag Team Pro Wrestling, I don't think it should be the 4th. It's bad, but
it's basically unplayable, man. Picking from a menu of moves.
You can figure it out. X-Men, yes.
Yes, one of the worst games.
Heroes of the Lance, probably. I don't have a lot of experience with it. And then he put Deadly Towers #1 on this list.
So I feel like Deadly Towers was #1 on the list because, I mean, one, like I said, admittedly, not a great game, but a decent game. And I think it has positives. But it's a goofy game that's easy to lambaste. For the reasons I said. You've got this knight walking around fighting slinkies, bouncy balls. The game's not real clear in what you're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So it's an easy one to kind of poke fun at. But as time goes on, you find so many of these people, their opinions on what games are bad don't really come from actually having sat down and played them themselves. It's these opinions that have kind of permeated the collector scene of whatever you're in. Same thing happens with records. Same thing happens with movies. Everyone out there goes, "Oh, Hudson Hawk's an awful movie." I kind of like Hudson Hawk.
It's like, have you actually seen it?
Yeah, because now it's really not a bad movie.
The issue is that when this stuff gets in the pantheon now, like for example, the worst offender. Not that it's a bad game, that people that rag on Super Mario Brothers 2 when it's a masterpiece.
Or Castlevania 2, again, a game with problems that it does a lot of stuff right.
That's the problem. Is like for historical accuracy, you have to push back. As people like in this realm, you can't let people get away with it. And obviously, he's a comedy writer, Sean Baby, and I love Sean Baby. I have his T-shirt. I bought.
Well, it's the same thing with AVGN. He's a comedy show.
It's a character.
It's a character.
Yeah. So this was funny in the article. I don't know if I remember this at the time, but okay. So he basically said, graphics 0, fun 0, party use 5. You can play a drinking game with Deadly Towers, have one of your friends, the smallest one in case you need to be restrained, play the game. The rest of the people watch and drink every time he vocally expresses his disgust with the game. You can theoretically take turns, but everyone will probably be too drunk to move in a few minutes. I remember that specifically reading that as 17-year-old Pat back in the day. Sean Baby was emailed by the producer of the game. This is the article by Alan Weiss. Subject, Deadly Towers. It was originally titled Hell's Bells, but we couldn't use that. That's actually something I've heard of. I produced the game, and it wasn't that bad for the times. Some of the others are way worse. Nice to see it again, though, from Lego Media.
Oh, okay, yeah, I do remember reading that. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's really, especially when you look at the others in the top 5, X-Men should be the number. X-Men is a game that doesn't have a bad enough reputation, in my opinion. It is one of the shittiest games I have. You can't even really call it a game.
Half star.
It's so fucking bad.
I might have done a video with it with Storm years back.
Yes. But an awful game. One of those ones that I've always revisited because I'm like, maybe, because you revisit a lot of like the LJN and crappier games and you realize, okay, there's something here. They're not all horrible. There is nothing good about X-Men. It's just miserable.
Multiplayer simultaneous.
So you can hurt someone else. So you can. That's not a positive.
Well, hurt someone else by them playing the game.
Right. That's what I mean. That makes it even worse, not better.
Have you seen that NES Punk video?
Yeah, I saw that one.
Oh,
yeah.
Storm was looking cute. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to give that credit. X-Men. It's always, to me, the worst ones. The bombs and half-star games. Dragon's Lair, X-Men, Where's Waldo, Cheetah Men 2, and Action 52. Like it's like those 5 to me. Like that's your list. Right. That's your, like, for by and large, that's your list of the worst games. And then a couple of Color Dreams ones get down to a half star, but usually like 1 star. So they're kind of amusing, the graphics at least.
All of those games, like you can see where they wanted it to be a good game, but it wasn't a good game.
They just didn't have the skill.
Yeah.
Like Secret Scout and stuff like that. It's like, there's some mining stuff going on here. There's like interesting ideas. They didn't have the skill. They didn't know how to program.
Or the horribly named Master Who and the Drunkard Chew. Honestly, there's a decent game there somewhere.
Yeah. P-Radicus Conflict is actually a good game.
Sure.
That's like, because it's kind of open world exploration, overhead shooters. Like, this is interesting. It's not complex. Like, they could... Like, they were too ambitious sometimes for what they want. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, do something small. Anyway, so so the personal bias, I put that in a note, like when you see personal biases come in. I think there's a need to defend some games when you could tell people either didn't play it when it came out, or they don't have the sort of breadth of knowledge of the console or the system. And obviously we're older. We've been around for most of it. But I would never dare to say certain Atari games are like horrible because I don't have the experience with the whole library to say that. I might say they're worse than this, but
I try to look at them. I do try to look at them from the time they came out. For instance, Haunted House is not a game I go back to play with any regularity, but I get why people liked it back then.
Sure. Adventure's deemed a classic. I'm not going to rag on it because you're a single pixel running around. At the time, that was unique and different. To have that on Atari, a semi sort of open world game like that in Atari, or I'm not going to rag on. I'll rag on Pac-Man. That was terrible back then. I mean, that was just an abomination back then. I mean, that was disappointing back then. Come on, when you play that, before you're like, this is terrible. Can't play it.
The Atari Pac-Man.
Yeah,
clarify. Yes.
But like, playing Spider-Man was fun. Like, you have to remember if you're out there saying, "Oh, this is an age world. This was bad." Like, you try to remember the experience of people at the time. That's how you have to try to grade those experiences. At the time, what was this like against its contemporaries? Did it set a new bar? Was it a lot worse? But like I said, I'm not even willing to go down that route. You'll never hear me say this is the worst Atari game ever because I have no idea. I just don't know. I haven't played enough of them to know.
I can clearly say what the worst Nintendo game ever is.
Yes, we played enough of them over the marathons and our experience to know that.
And if I do think if I had to make the call, it would be X-Men. I'd rather play Dragon's Lair over X-Men.
Over Cheetah Man 2? Or Action 52 because there's some charm to some of those dumb games?
Yes.
There's some charm.
X-Men is just devoid of any charm, anything even ironically enjoyable. It's fucking bad.
There's mutant powers you use and it drains your energy.
That drains your energy.
And you don't see your energy until you hit pause. I mean, that's kind of bad.
Bad. So bad.
That was far. That's one of those ones that in the book we don't know who did the dev. That's one of the 2 games we don't know who did the dev. It's one of a couple companies where there's no clue.
It wasn't Beam. I thought it was potentially Beam.
No, I forget. There was like 1 or 2 companies that was like we don't know who did it. There's clues for that one. The other one was one of the 2 Godzilla games. Toho published it, and I think the dev was still unknown. Anyway, so like the game that was so like incompetent. Now we're just ragging on X-Men. You didn't know what your health bar was,
right?
And so when you use your special power, like for Iceman, you float around quick. It drains your power.
Yeah.
So like, which is fine as a use, but like if you don't know your power, you just die. You'll just die.
Well, and the point of being able to do that is to avoid spikes. So if I'm going to go over the spikes and lose health because I'm using the power, or if I'm going to go over the spikes and
or the worst thing, the gates that open and close at erratic intervals.
Yes,
you can die anyway because you used up your power.
You literally it's a gamble. You literally cannot time it.
It's Russian roulette on the NES.
It's fucking awful.
And not the Russian roulette.
Not the Super Russian roulette.
Super Russian roulette that we both have a copy of.
Fine game.
Never got the holster, so that's okay.
I'm not sure that those ever came out.
I don't know. Call them out. But, anyway, so that was fun. Any others that you like to defend in the sort of the?
Tom Sawyer is one that you brought up, but I just thought it was way easier to bring up.
It's one of the popular ones, like people that go after Zelda 2, and I was just like,
oh yeah, sure, I love Zelda 2. I mean, it's my favorite Zelda.
I feel like talking to people like when this game came out. Do you realize how through the fucking moon we were when this game came out? Like,
we didn't have a set style in which Zelda was supposed
there wasn't
to be made.
30 Zelda games yet.
Right.
We had 1. And there was nothing in the laws of video games that said, well, the sequel has to be exactly like the original and how it looks and how it functions. That this wasn't a thing. That's why, again, Super Mario 2 was like, holy shit, you can pick up enemies and throw them. You can pick up turnips. This is cool.
That was just evolution of what we were playing.
Evolution. Yeah, it was great. It was great.